I am a deep-sea diver. I explore shipwrecks for a living. Over the years, I have found all kinds of things. Lost Spanish treasures, various sea creatures, and shoes. Lots of shoes. On a dive last week, I was exploring a lost ship in the mid-Atlantic. I was excited because I was hoping that I'd found a lost trade ship. While exploring, I found what appeared to have been crates full of wine bottles. They all were sealed and seemed full, so I thought I'd hit the ancient wine jackpot. Unfortunately, when I got them to the surface, I realized that the bottles were not filled with wine. Instead, they had been weighed down and had a heap of paper stuffed in them. The bottles were filled with collections of letters. I will read them to you now exactly as I found them.
August 19th, 1643. Dear reader, I hope with all my heart that this letter is lost at sea, never to have eyes cast upon it again, not for what is contained within these words, but for what is contained within this vessel that would carry this letter to you. At current I am on board a ship, bound to return to Her Majesty's great kingdom within the fortnight. We are by now approximately halfway with certainty. I fear I am the only one left aboard this dreaded voyage. I have taken up residence in the servants' quarters, beneath the bunk beds in a small hidden passageway within the hull of the ship. It is not the most pleasant of places, nor the most spacious, but I have suffered far greater indignities in the months now past, and it is, at least, the only place I believe to be safe, even if only for the time being. The ship groans and creaks endlessly. I can bear these noises during the daylight hours, but when the night falls it is unfathomably terrifying. During these darkest of nights, I long for the warmth of my mother's voice, or company of my brave friend Joseph. Most of all, however, long for the comfort of light. I pray the sun will rise quickly. I know not to spark so much as a single match once the sun sinks below the horizon, as the light would call the beast to me like a moth to a flame. I hear it move about at night. It seems to be nocturnal. Several times it has come quite close to my hideaway. Holding my breath, I had imagined it would find me at any moment during those times, but so far it has not. This ordeal began a little over 2 months past. My father, Sir John Lewis William, who was a brave man with an enduring boastfulness about him and a strong desire for adventure, was appointed as head of an expedition bound for the Southern and Central Americas. The charter was booked by a private individual who wished for my father and his team to map and document the new land. It was encouraged for specimens of both botanic and zoological significance to be brought back with promise of handsome payment per unique specimen. Live specimens of both classification would fetch a higher price. When I heard word of this trip, I desperately wished to accompany my father. He had always promised that one day he would take me on one of his adventures. However, when I broached the subject to him, he refused me. I was to remain home with my dear mother and excitable younger brother, as I was becoming a lady now, and it was necessary for me to learn all the intricate fineries a lady should know to be a desirable wife. I did not yet have a fiancé, as many others of my age did, and my father feared I would become a spinster if I were to keep rejecting the proposals put forth to me. Foolishly, I allowed my strong-willed nature to compel me. Feigning illness to my mother, I placed many pillows in my bedding and liberated myself from my room through my window. With only a small bag of personal belongings, I made haste in the early hours of the morning to the shipping harbor. It was a difficult trip. I certainly did not expect it to take as long as it did on foot. It never seemed as far before when taking the horses. Nonetheless, I was not deterred. I was quick to stow away on my father's ship. It was easy enough to hide my hair beneath a hat and act the part of a servant carrying on cargo for the voyage. As the ship left the harbor, I found a peephole to watch from. I saw the docks become smaller, and my mother waving with vigor from the end of them. I quite amused myself with the notion that she had undoubtedly discovered my absence and was desperately waving for my father to turn back. All the while, my father would be waving in return, professing his undying love and assurances of his return across the sea, without any clue of my mother's distress. Such a childish thought to take glee in. Had I known what the weeks ahead were to hold, I would have launched myself from the bow of the ship and swam back to safety. The journey across the sea was to take a month in favorable conditions, and I had to remain hidden until we reached our destination, or my father may have been likely to turn the ship back. I spent many hours stowed away in this very spot that I am writing these letters from now, within the servants' quarters in a hidden passage within the hull of the ship. I had not considered, at the time of boarding, how I would feed myself or uphold the standard of care a lady should whilst I was stowed away. Before long I was hungry and faint with exhaustion. I realized after that, had Joseph not found me, I may very well have perished. Joseph was a young man only 2 years older than I. He was dark of hair with a strong jawline and blue eyes that sparkled as sapphires may in sunlight. His body was strong from working as servants do, and his demeanor was favorable. Although he at first wished to advise my father of my presence aboard the ship, I reminded him that I was the daughter of a noble, and to betray my command was to commit treason, an act punishable by death. With this gentle reminder, he was kind enough not to mention the word to my father. For the remainder of the voyage, Joseph would bring me food and water. He was, by my good fortune, working in the kitchen as an assistant to the chef Sir Thomas Broward, who was an angry, portly man that indulged his liquor far more than he should on most evenings. This meant that Joseph was able to bring me supplies without arousing suspicion. I will also report that men aboard the ship have no sense of common decency. I was unfortunate enough to see far too many men adorned with scant clothes and smell many unpleasant odors. It is not an experience I recommend for any lady to endure. When the ship finally docked on foreign land, I could hardly contain my joy. I had watched as the far-off land became closer, and had been disappointed several times to see the land come close, but that we had passed by instead of landing upon it. When I had made my presence known to my father, his face had been surprised, then had dropped. He had no words for several moments. I believe he had been reminiscing of my mother's frantic waving. I could imagine the trail of thoughts unraveling themselves within his head. When he finally did speak, he spoke in a low tone of voice that informed me I was in more trouble than I had ever been in before. I had known that at this time there was no way he could turn back, not without facing reprimanding for ending the expedition early. I knew he must allow me to remain, and I dutifully did well to contain my excitement as he told me I was to stay. However, I was to make myself useful. I was expected to assist with meal preparations, mend clothes, tend to any wounded, and aid in documenting the expedition. This was far more work than anyone else had been assigned, but it did not deter me. I was glad to be there and filled with wonder. The first week was rather uneventful. My father was most adequate in motivating the party, and we had left splendor of white shore in favor of the jungle exploration. The heat was uncomfortable, and when it would rain, it was as if the heavens themselves were flooding down onto earth, making the air heavy and difficult to move through. However, it was the insects that plagued our every waking moment that were unbearable. Every afternoon I would have to remove several leeches from many men, some from the most unfortunate of places. Joseph was assigned to be my caretaker for the journey. They knew not of his involvement in hiding me aboard the ship, and I was not displeased with this decision, as I had, by this time, become quite fond of Joseph, despite his mischievous attitude. In the rare moments of free time, I found I rather enjoyed looking at the specimens that had been collected. My favorite was a large blue bird who moved back and forth in its containment. I had witnessed its capture, and it had most definitely put up a fight. I learned with most swiftness not to try and touch any of the collection, as many of them would bite upon contact. Joseph, however, was not such a swift learner. For the evenings, I was given a private shelter which no man was allowed to enter, though being alone in the jungle at night unsettled me greatly. The noises the jungle makes once it is dark are truly frightening. Leaves rustle, twigs snap, various creatures of the night call out to one another with harrowing screams. The moments I feared most, however, were the moments of silence. As I laid awake staring at the thin fabric of my shelter, I could only imagine what beast was so fearsome that it scared all other creatures into complete silence. On more than one occasion, I had quietly sunken deeper into my bedding like a small child. On more than one occasion, I had quietly sunken deeper into my bedding like a small child would, as I was sure I heard the soft fall of slow footsteps pass by. They were without a doubt not of human origin. I must end this letter now. The light is beginning to fade, and I must venture from my hiding place to procure water before it is gone altogether. If I survive the night, I will write tomorrow of what was experienced in the depths of the jungle. Yours sincerely, Emily.